Well, hello there, lovely viewers, and welcome to Get Well, Stay Well on Revelation TV. As always, my name is Cyrus, and delighted to be joined every week by Felicity. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Si. We've got a really interesting program today on gluten-free bread.
Ooh.
Because, you know, we live in an age of a lot of deception, and wheat is no longer the wheat that we know from biblical times, the sort of bread that Jesus ate when he said he was the bread of life. Things have changed dramatically, and bread is now so commercial, and it's got gluten in it, which a lot of people are allergic to, and also gliadin, which is a protein. So a lot of people are coming off wheat now, and they're going on to flaxseed bread and really delicious breads. And I made this change quite a few years ago, so I love the new kind of grains that I'm eating.
Because when we think we need to be on a diet, and one of the first things that we think of is we need to kind of eliminate bread and wheat from our diet, isn't it? Why is that?
Well, it's true, because wheat actually does blow us up, and they're now discovering that it's quite a cause of Alzheimer's. This is the new kind of wheat, you know, it's called the semi-dwarf wheat, which is completely different to the biblical wheat, which was emmer wheat, and the kind of wheat that the Egyptians had. And so really things have changed. It's like everything else with our food. It's been commercialized, it's been played around with. Some of it's genetically modified, of course, as well. So we have to really start thinking out, you know, how we're going to survive in these difficult times. And going back to God's perfect diet in Genesis 1:29 and 30, and the Daniel diet, Daniel 1, is really, really important.
So tell me about the Genesis 1:21
well,
diet.
It says, God says, "Behold, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the earth, and every tree with fruit with seed in it, and this will be to you as meat. And to every living thing I give green plant for food." So we find that the green plant, the chlorophyll in the green plant, which has come from the sunlight on the plant, actually creates health in our bodies. Our blood is made from hemoglobin, as you know, and the plants, they run on chlorophyll, and they're very, very similar. There's only about 1 molecule difference between hemoglobin and the, what was the other one I was saying? Hemoglobin and chlorophyll. Okay. Yeah, we've just come on the set, guys, so don't worry, we're just settling ourselves down. So those two things are really important, and when we feed our body the green plants that God has said we should have, and the wheatgrass in particular, we do actually alkalize the body. We alkalize the blood back to the right alkalinity, which is a pH of 7.365 or near that. And we find that people get well, and they stay well, because they're not being recontaminated with all the commercial and processed foods that are now in the supermarkets. So, you know, I've been doing this now a long time, about 20 years, and it's really the most delicious diet in the world. I love the food. I never really liked dead animal food anyway, from a child. You know, at school we were given meat, and I used to say to my mother, you know, we had that awful grey meat again today. And I love the gravy, I love all the sauces.
Yeah.
So very often I'll have a plate of vegetables and just add all the lovely sauces. You can have horseradish sauce, you can have red currant jelly, all those good things.
I mean, we're talking about food now, but today's subject is food related, talking about bread and gluten-free bread. Let's just talk about how important it is that we watch. Why is it important we watch what we eat? I mean, how does that affect our health?
It affects our health, and it affects our minds as well, because they've now discovered that the wheat and the gliadin, the gluten, are causing Alzheimer's and depression. And, you know, so many of the letters I get and the emails saying, you know, we're just feeling so depressed and so down, and don't seem to be able to get out of this rut. And very often when people eliminate the bread, and there's a cardiologist called William Davis who's actually written a book, a best-selling book called Wheat Belly, and another doctor called David Perlmutter, who's also written a book called Grain Brain. And these books are really interesting. They've come out, they're bestsellers. And as people drop the the grain from their diets, they're starting to feel so much better. Once you feel better, of course, you don't want to go back on them. And occasionally, if I go to a restaurant, you know, there's a beautiful bread on the table, I'll have a tiny bit and just taste it, and I think, no, I don't need to do that anymore. Whereas before, you'd wolf down the bread and the butter.
It is tempting, isn't it? You go to a restaurant, automatically they put the bread and the butter there on the table.
Well, of course it's tempting, because you're hungry, you sit down and you have to wait, you know, to get your first course or whatever you're going to eat. And so it's very tempting to nibble away. So
carrot sticks instead.
Carrot, cucumber, you know, they call it crudité, all those little chopped up vegetables and things. And they're delicious. And olives, of course, here in Spain and in Portugal, where I lived, there's always olives on the table. And also there's beautiful carrots that are marinated in olive oil with a little coriander.
Yes.
Absolutely scrumptious. Much better.
Let's go to our first clip for today. This is called The Wheat, A Perfect Chronic Poison. It's by Dr. William Davis, and he's talking about his book, Wheat Belly. Let's take a look.
The doctor who created Bill O'Reilly's new diet says skip the hamburger rolls and pasta salad at your Labor Day cookout. Dr. William Davis is a cardiologist and author of the best-selling book, Wheat Belly, Lose the Wheat, Lose the Weight, and Find Your Path Back to Health. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Labor Day.
You too.
Why, in your estimation, is wheat so bad?
It's not wheat. It's a 18-inch tall plant created by genetics research in the 60s and 70s. This thing has many new features nobody told you about, such as there's a new protein in this thing called gliadin. We're not talking about gluten, so I'm not addressing the people who have gluten sensitivities and celiac disease. I'm talking about everybody else, because everybody else is susceptible, for instance, to the gliadin protein that is an opiate. This thing binds to the opiate receptors in your brain, and in most people stimulates appetite, such that you and I consume, on average, 440 more calories per day, 365 days per year. I bet you're hungry right now.
I'm always hungry right now.
We did just the bagels on the front of the book here do look appetizing. That said, so it's not necessarily the wheat. It's the kind of wheat that we're eating.
That's right. It's not the wheat that Mom had. It's not the wheat that Grandma had. It's a very different genetically changed plant. By the way, this all predates the techniques of genetic modification. So these techniques were crude, imprecise, unpredictable, far worse than modern genetic modification. So the stuff we're sold to us, no questions asked, is the product of research that occurred before the techniques of gene splicing. So this thing's very different, has many new, unique properties on humans. But the appetite stimulation effect is probably the most standout effect of all. But there are others.
Would it be possible to turn back the clock and go back to the old wheat? I mean, is that scientifically possible at this point in time?
It's very possible. It's economically unfeasible, probably, because this thing yields about tenfold more per acre. And so we'd have to ask farmers to take a loss in effect. We'd have to ask agribusiness to revert back to old seeds. They can do it. They probably won't do it. Now, we have sparked a movement, and we are having a lot of people. They're having record drops in sales because of this, because so many people, I think what's driving this is the tidal wave of change. If 3 people lost 8 pounds, well, big deal. This thing just dies and fizzles, right? But we're seeing hundreds of thousands of people losing 30, 80, 150 pounds, diabetics becoming no longer diabetic, people with arthritis having dramatic relief, people losing their legs swelling, acid reflux, irritable bowel syndrome, depression, on and on and on, every day.
So here's the question. If people want to start eating healthier today, then, and they can't afford to go to a specialty store, they can't afford to manufacture their own wheat, what do they start doing right now?
Eat real single ingredient foods. Eat avocados, olives, olive oil, meats, olives, vegetables. In other words, real food, the stuff that is least likely to have been changed by agribusiness, certainly not grains. So when I say grains, of course, over 90% of all grains we eat are going to be wheat. It's not barley, it's not millet, it's not flax, it's going to be wheat. So it's really a wheat issue. Wheat has been the recipient of this extensive set of changes.
Hi there, and welcome back. I'm just going to ask your advice there. It was mentioned, the doctor mentioned the foods that we need to be eating. Within his list, he mentions meat and dairy. And on all our programs, we always say we need to avoid meat and dairy. What are your thoughts?
Well, he was criticized for saying you should do that rather than the wheat. And what he's saying is, it's rather like saying, you know, it's bad for you to smoke cigarettes, but have a filtered cigarette instead.
Yeah.
So they're both bad for you. The ideal thing is to get back onto God's diet, as he was then saying about the avocados,
Yes.
the olives, and the real food, as he said. And so that's what I teach on my courses, that people do come back to real food, the onions, the garlic, the carrots. And so we can eat some of them raw by juicing, which is wonderful. The meat and dairy, it does compromise your health.
Let's take things back to basics now. What are the dangers, or what does meat and dairy do to our body and our system in comparison to what the fresh vegetables and fruits can do?
Well, the meat and dairy are both animal products, right? Because the dairy comes from the cow. And they form acid in the body, basically. So they make us more and more acid. That will also draw the calcium out of the bones, so it gives us osteoporosis. We now know that the meat and the dairy are a large cause of sickness, of heart disease, of cancer, of diabetes, of arthritis, all the plagues that we seem to have in our modern world. So when people detox and they go back to God's food, you know, I call it the Genesis diet, because God has given it to us when he creates us right at the beginning. How basic is that? Mm-hmm. You know, the first chapter, the first book of the Bible, we're told what to eat.
Yeah.
And have we done that? No, we haven't. We've really changed the food. It's been processed, and over the 2,000 years since Jesus was on the earth, and of course Jesus ate fish, we know that, and he would have eaten meat as well on the high days and the holy days. So the Bible does say, never eat the blood or the fat of the animal. Have the well-roast lamb. That was the traditional biblical food. And if you have organic meat now, and you really want to eat meat, then you carry on and do that. But you don't have the processed, genetically modified, you know, the food that's been contaminated, and the animals that have been farm reared in these terrible huts. You know, I show a film called Food Inc., which shows the terrible cruelty to the animals that's now going on. You know, you have the picture of, you know, the cow grazing happily in the sunshine. It's not like that at all. And the pigs and the chickens, you know, just cooped up. It's dreadful. And so our food has changed dramatically from biblical times. So the food, the meat and the dairy, 75% of us are now lactose intolerant.
I mean,
and there's the casein in the milk.
Let's just take things back. You're saying how the food is transformed. We are transforming. I mean, if we look back for the last 50 years, 60, 70 years, when it was more farmland kind of areas, more people were obviously growing their own foods, and that's how they were surviving. They were more healthy. Now, you look at the elder people today, and that's their custom. That's what they're used to, is eating the fruits and the vegetables and the raw kind of foods. I know Spain as well, very much, they like to grow their own fruits and vegetables and everything. And how you look at how things have transformed till today with all these fast food restaurants. You look at countries like America, they have competitions where they say if you can eat this whole hamburger, you can eat this whole steak, you can get it for free, and it's like a huge thing over there. It's a promotion of the meats, and people just don't seem to realize the dangers.
Well, it's the politics of food. You see, it's like Big Pharma. It's the politics of big food as well. And so much money is made, like the tobacco industry, for instance. They don't ban tobacco because so much tax is made out of it. So much tax is made out of alcohol as well. So governments have got to consider how they're going to bring the tax in order to run the country and pay for the NHS and all the things that we rather take for granted, which might not always be there because we are now in such a parlous state financially. You know, America has trillions of debt, Britain does, Europe does. And although it's all being smoothed over and we're being told, you know, things are getting better, in fact, there is no gold behind the paper money. Mm-hmm. So as Graham Bridger puts on these really good programs, and Richard Kent also explains it, you know, we're living in a sort of false bubble, which will burst. And the governments realize that, but they have to try and keep things going, and in the meantime they're getting their taxes in. But this is why we have so much sickness now. You know, the grandparents and the great-grandparents, they hardly ever got cancer.
Yeah.
But Ty Bollinger, for instance, who's just written this wonderful book, Cancer, Step Outside the Box. And he's done a tremendous amount. He's devoted his life to this now. He was a chartered accountant before, and then his father died of cancer, his mother died of cancer, and they had so many in the family. So he was really devastated. He's a lovely guy. He's a big, sensitive guy, and a bright businessman. And he thought, you know, we've got to really examine this. And it's like me, having lost my husband, my daughter, nearly died of pancreatic cancer myself. I mean, I'm absolutely determined to put the word out there. It's a mission. And we don't want other people to go through what we went through. So Ty Bollinger's written this book explaining with all the, you know, these top immune doctors in America, many of whom I met in April when I went over to San Diego, and really coming out with the truth. And of course, it's very unpopular politically. It's unpopular for the food industries, for the big pharma. But, you know, the general public are beginning to wake up. And as they said, you know, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. And I think with programs like Philip Day and myself as well, people are beginning to understand, because we've done years of research on this.
I mean, it just goes back down to education at the end of the day. If people realise the seriousness and the severe dangers that they're putting themselves into by eating the wrong foods, everyone surely will change their living habits, their lifestyle, the foods that they're eating. But just talk to us how important it is. It's important the food that we do eat, but more importantly, let's get this clear, it's important to avoid the really wrong foods, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, it's a matter of choice, Si. Nobody puts anything into our mouth to eat. We actually do that ourselves. So it's a question of really thinking out the science, understanding the science, which I had to learn, because when I was at school, we weren't taught all this stuff. In fact, when I was at school a long time ago, you know, the food was better, actually. It was more natural.
Yeah.
All this has happened in the last 50 years, I would say. So you've grown up with it.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that people have a choice. They have a choice as to what they're going to do. If they're going to make better cells, because our bodies are all cells, we're going to make better cells, younger cells, fitter cells, or we're going to degenerate our bodies and our minds as well, because you know, the depression and the Alzheimer's and the autoimmune diseases are all coming from our lifestyle. So people, it's really a matter of education, as you say. It's not medication, it's education. Yeah. And it's taking responsibility for yourself. And of course, if you can reach someone in the family, then you'll probably touch the whole family, because, you know, the people on my course this week, I've got a doctor, I've got a midwife, I've got lovely people, pastors on my course, and they're going back to take this message to their churches. And so it's really exciting, and I'm telling them all the DVDs to buy and then set it up, you know, start a home group.
It is lovely, because we sometimes we're in the office and we speak to the viewers, obviously, and they often say that how their lives are transformed from watching our programs, and now they're juicing, and now they're getting their family to juices and their friends to juice, and people are also, they all feel better for it. At the end of the day, they change the way that they're eating. They feel that they have more energy, more importantly, and you really do notice that when you change your diet.
I think you get much more energy and you get much more cheerful. That's what I noticed. And when we were living just on wheatgrass, when I trained in America, we only had wheatgrass and salad. And we were getting higher and higher, and everyone was hugging each other, and it was, you know, people lost all their depression, they lost all their gloom and doom. And when you get on the living foods, of course, it's so much better for you in every way. If you're thinking you're eating dead animals, you know, you're going to get all the toxicity from the dead animal and the adrenaline that was in that animal as it was killed in fear.
I mean, we've got wheatgrass. This is wheatgrass on screen now. I mean, what are the benefits? Why is it so important for us to be eating wheatgrass?
Well, wheatgrass grows prolifically all over the earth. You know, God has sown the grass, really. Apart from the Arctic, we've got it. and apart from the deserts. So that is quite an interesting picture, because you can see it jointing at the bottom. You can see a daughter stalk coming off the main stalk of the grass.
Yeah.
And that is the prime moment to actually harvest it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite interesting. You grow this, it takes 11 days.
Now, we can all grow it, can't we? It's very easy to do.
We can grow it indoors and we can grow it outdoors, yes. I've done both. And in the winter, or if people are living in a cold climate, they can actually buy something like a Fresh Life sprouter, which automatically waters it, because you've got to get this right. You've got to water it, got to look after it. But with the Fresh Life sprouter, really, you can just turn it on, change the water maybe twice in the 11 days, and it looks after itself. And you get the most beautiful crop of wheatgrass.
So once we've grown the wheatgrass, what do we do next?
Well, you harvest it at exactly that moment where it's jointing, where the daughter stem is coming off from the main one. And so you harvest the whole lot with a ceramic knife or just scissors, and you put it in green bags in the fridge to keep for, it'll last you 3 or 4 days. So you need to have several growing in sequence, obviously. And so you're continually growing new ones. You can use Fresh Life sprouters, you can use the boxes as well. And people can find out from me where to get those things. I think it's wonderful. And you notice immediately the difference, because the wheatgrass has all the goodness in it, has all the minerals, all the vitamins, all the amino acids.
And you can juice it, can't you, Felicity?
You can juice it. You can juice it. You certainly don't want to try and eat it. If you try to eat grass, it's, you know, as children, we've all laid on the lawn and
there's a cup of wheatgrass juice. There
now,
you go.
I photographed that myself, and that's my own fresh wheatgrass. It really is delicious. And when people are just getting used to the taste, you can add a little bit of lemon with it.
Excellent. Now, let's talk about the dangers of wheat. We're talking about gluten-free bread today. The dangers of wheat. Now, inside the wheat, there is something called gliadin.
Yes. Can I just make the point right now that wheatgrass does not have the gliadin and the gluten in.
Right.
Because you saw it growing. It hasn't actually, it hasn't seeded. So you're actually getting the wheatgrass at the prime moment of growth before it becomes allergic to us with gluten and gliadin. Because people always say, oh, you know, I thought wheat's bad, and now you're telling us to have wheatgrass.
Yeah.
But that's the reason. It's really important. Right.
Talk to me about gliadin. What is gliadin?
Well, gliadin is a protein which we have, which they've now putting more and more into the way that bread is made commercially. Because remember, they're not interested in our life, they're interested in shelf life. And if you notice, the bread will last for days and days and days now.
Yes.
Whereas the old-fashioned bread, you know, had to be eaten pretty quickly. So we've now got the gluten and the gliadin, which are actually making us sick. And as soon as, you know, people don't think of dropping out bread really, but as soon as they do, they just notice a tremendous difference. The first thing is the tummy comes really flat, because bread will bloat you out, give you IBS, of course celiac, and so many other digestive diseases. And when people get back to God's food, you know, which He's told us. So the fruit, the vegetables, the seeds, the nuts, and the green plant, and especially when we juice, then people find that all their digestive disease really does go away. You can live on wheatgrass, you know. You can actually live on wheatgrass and be really healthy. The wheatgrass juice, I mean, you can actually live on that. And when I was really ill, when I had pancreatic cancer, you know, 2003, I was having wheatgrass and just juices. That's all I had. And then you see that detoxes the body. You can also put wheatgrass on joints that are arthritic, and you know, pack the joint with say a flannel, piece of ordinary flannel, not a flannel you wash your face with, but a piece of linen, whatever. Soak it in the wheatgrass, so it's all very messy and bright green, of course. So you then cover that with some cling wrap or some waterproofing.
Yeah.
And then you put maybe a sock over the hand or a warm pad if you're doing knees or something. Sleep like that, and in the morning you will find that the acidity, the uric acid, lactic acid, all these acids have come out of the joint. People are absolutely amazed how that works. So that's using wheatgrass topically as well as actually drinking it.
Where can our viewers purchase wheatgrass?
Well, you can grow it, which is the cheapest way, or you can get it in a powder form or a frozen form. It can be sent to you in the post in ice bags.
And do they all have the same benefits if it's powdered or frozen?
Well, I think that the best is always the one that you've grown yourself. There's no doubt about it. There's something living about it. The powdered ones, sometimes they add things like spirulina and chlorella, which are very good, so they add those in to actually make it stronger. And so some of the powdered ones are very good, and if I'm traveling, I just have that. And if people don't like the taste, they also make it in capsules.
Excellent.
So you can swallow the capsules down.
Final comment I want to make about gliadine, it was mentioned in the clip as well, it's if you remove gliadine from your diet, then it helps to reduce diabetes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, diabetes has grown so prolifically with our diet, with people getting bigger, and it's mixing up all these trans fats. You know, the trans fats, we were told how healthy these new fats were instead of having real butter. In fact, if you're going to have a butter of any kind, have the real thing, you know, and it's the trans fats that hydrolyzed vegetable oil, the high fructose corn oil, which is in everything. Mm-hmm. You know, everything that you buy that's processed has got these things in. And it's under lots of different names. And if you Google it, you'll find what all these names are. And then you start looking on the ingredients on packaged food. And my goodness me, it's a bit of a shock.
Now also the foods that we should be eating, that was mentioned on the clips, were things like avocado, olives, olive oil. Why are they so important?
Well, they're the natural living foods, so they've got the goodness of the earth and the sunshine, the way that they've grown. And, you know, the fruit has been put there hanging on the trees looking absolutely delicious. It looks so attractive to eat. And the vegetables are even better for us because the fruit has a little bit of sugar in it and the vegetables don't have the same kind of sugar. So the vegetables, you know, what I use for my green juice is basically the cucumbers, celery, and then I put an apple with it to make it taste nice, and a little dash of lemon juice, fresh lemon. And so that makes a green juice. Then you can add things like kale and broccoli. And funnily enough, when you juice those, put them all together, you actually don't taste the vegetable as much. You taste the apple and the cucumber. And the cucumber is a very liquid fruit, as you know. The cucumber is, you get a lot of juice out of a cucumber. So that's the basic thing to use, and to use a good juicer.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is called The Grain Brain, and this is by Dr. David Perlmutter. Let's take a look.
Best-selling book Grain Brain claims that foods like bread and sugar could have a toxic impact on your brains, possibly leading to depression, ADHD, even Alzheimer's.
But critics have slammed these claims, even some calling them nonsense. Here to confront his critics is the author of the New York Times bestseller Grain Brain, Dr. David Perlmutter. Welcome back to the show. Nice
Glad
to
to be back. Thanks.
All right, so answer some of your critics here, because they've taken you to task. Some, and it's kind of funny, may have not even read the book. Here's the first critique, and this comes from Julie Miller. She's at St. Catherine University. She writes this: he has so many themes in his book there, it's hard to know what to talk about. It's like a field that has some good plants, some you are not so sure of, and weeds. What do you say to Julie?
I love it, Julie. Nice job. I think, first of all, let's recognize that Julie is a paid spokesperson for the grain industry, so is there truly objectivity in that statement? I tend to doubt that. But, you know, the idea is that there are these very important points about Grain Brain. Why is this book now 16 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list? Because it's giving people great information. So, you know, these are, I can say, somewhat biased comments, but All I can say is God bless her for trying.
We're going to take a second critique at the book, and this one comes from Gary Drevich of Forbes. He says several critics, while not questioning the neurological risks of a high-carb diet, have pointed out that readers may interpret his book as a green light to load up on meat and dairy instead, a choice that has its own well-documented cardiovascular issue, heart risks, he says.
Yeah, and I would say that's not a comment that's necessarily off base. This is not a call to turn on the eating meat all the time and having a lot of dairy products. It really relegates meat and dairy products to being sort of like the garnish on the side of the plate, pretty much a much more vegetarian diet. And keep in mind, the meat that you want to eat should be grass-fed, much lower in terms of its causing inflammation in the body, which is really a cornerstone of Alzheimer's.
You make the point in the book that we've been lied to for the past 30 years. That
Strong words, and we were challenged on that last time, but I'm holding my ground on that. We were given wrong information. That's why you believe that this has been controversial, right? You know, without controversy, we wouldn't make progress. You need conjecture to move forward in the world, and we're really saying that, you know, we've been told live our lives come what may, and then suddenly when you walk into the room and don't know why, we've got a pill for you. There is no pill for Alzheimer's, and it is preventable. So for those 5.4 million Americans who are suffering, and frankly more, the families who are suffering, that didn't have to be.
Sure. My grandfather had Alzheimer's, so I certainly hear what you're saying, and I'm gluten-free, so I like the grain brain facto. Here we go. So I want to give another, if we have time, I want to go through a third critique here. So I find it sad to be in a position to say that I think so much of his book is a whole bunch of nonsense. Now he's absolutely right that we eat too much sugar and white bread. The rest of the story, though, is one just completely made up to support a hypothesis, and that's not a good way to do science. That's Dr. David Katz, Yale University's Preservation Research Center.
A lot of the information we used in Grain Brain has to do with what are called retrospective and prospective studies, not the so-called double-blind placebo-controlled trial. And I would submit, has there ever been a double-blind trial that says that we should have our children wear helmets when they're on their bicycles, for example? Who would design such a trial? Meaning half would use it and half would not. This is hard science. We know that those people with a high-carb diet have a dramatic increased risk for Alzheimer's. That's about as good as science can be when we tell people, therefore, cut back on your carbs, get your blood sugar down, and reduce your risk for a disease for which...
Hi there, welcome back. I just want to reiterate to our viewers how much the wrong foods that we eat can affect our mental state. So if we are eating things like wheat and bread, that can lead into depression and also things like ADHD as well.
Absolutely, absolutely right. And we have to get back to God's diet. And, you know, we talked about the Genesis diet, and I've already spoken about that this morning. And I'd just like to talk about the Daniel diet as well. And actually, you're mentioned at the end of it, Cyrus. You know King Cyrus? It's mentioned at the end of it. So there we go. This is Daniel 1, and I'm starting at verse 11. Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, they did find that the young men were 10 times fitter than all the magicians and enchanters in the whole kingdom, as they say. And then it says, and Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus.
Very
so
good.
There you go, Cyrus. King of Persia, a very merciful king. Fascinating stories in the Bible. But you see here, the Daniel diet, again, really makes it quite clear. Daniel lived on the vegetables and the water. And he didn't have a juicer, of course, in those days, but they were fitter. And so, you know, we've got it twice in the Bible. The Bible's amazing. At the end of the Bible, in Revelation, of course, it says the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. So, you know, God is amazing, and everything is in our Bible to keep us well, and also to keep our mind in a good place as well.
And it's quite simple. The diet that we need to be having is eat grass-fed food. Simple as that.
Yes, because the cow and the huge animals, they've actually grown that size on the grass. So, you know, when people say, where do you get your protein from? I have to tell them the best protein in the world is broccoli and the green plant. And actually, I love broccoli now, and I curry it because, you know, turmeric and cumin and curcumin are really good for us as well. All those delicious herbs that we put in the curry.
I think we need to reiterate to our viewers that eating healthy doesn't mean boring food. It can be delicious as well.
Oh, it's the best in the world. And what we need to get is more raw food restaurants. You know, in Jersey, we've now got 3 juice bars that are really doing so well. And now we just need someone to start a really good raw food restaurant.
And how do you do your curry?
How do you do your curry? Well, my mother taught me a wonderful recipe for curry, which is in my book, and we do it with apples and raisins. We put all kinds of delicious things in it. And, you know, you do fry it to start with, and you get the onions and the garlic, and I just make a fabulous curry. And I do curried vegetables, and sometimes I'll do a hard-boiled egg. I'll put a hard-boiled egg in there, because that's the one bit of animal protein that I still have. And basically, it's the egg yolk that is really good for us, rather than the white. You know, when you fry an egg, the white gets hard like plastic, and that's very indigestible in the body. But the actual yolk, especially if you have a raw yolk, it's really, really delicious and really good for you.
Rosemary actually called into the office last week, and she doesn't have the internet, but she asked about your recipe book. What can you say about your recipe book?
Well, the recipe book is very basic, and it's the things that I have learnt that have got me well over these years. And, you know, I would love to do an expensive, glossy recipe book with beautiful photographs, and one day maybe we'll be able to do that. But at the moment, I just want to get the word out there for people. So I think the 13 pages of sort of A4, I try to do things as inexpensively as I can, and they can download that to their computers. So basically, they've got all the ideas there of the juices, all the delicious juices that I've put together, and learnt from, you know, friends as well, because you swap recipes. It's great fun.
Give us an idea, Felicity. Just give us a little hint into what is your favourite juice. Give us the ingredients of that.
Well, my favourite juice would be certainly cucumber base with apple. And then
now, what about quantities? How much cucumber and apple would you put into that?
Well, I'm living on my own, so I only make the juice for myself. I only do 8 ounces at a time. So I would put in 1 cucumber, 1 apple, and then maybe half a pineapple. And I'd add in some broccoli and kale, whatever greens I've got. And I would just make enough for 1, because I really don't like having juices that have been stuck in the fridge for a few hours. And of course, if I'm going to be outside, then I have to take it in a flask. You know, you can get one of those thermos flasks and keep it cold, because they do taste better when they're cold. And if you have a Vitamix blender, that's a wonderful blender. You can put ice cubes in it. So then I would add an avocado, maybe. I love avocado, and you have to blend that. You can't juice an avocado because it's too soft. So the avocado makes it creamy. So the juices are much creamier. And a banana, of course, if you put a banana in with juices. You're getting hungry, I can see. So.
I am. I'm going to have to.
Sorry about that. But if you do live on the juices, believe me, you will feel fantastic. And this is what people do when they come for a couple of weeks, you know. They pay, not with me, they pay very little with me. When they pay to go to these smart places, I always laugh because all they're getting is wheatgrass. But of course, the money has to go on the staff, because they've got doctors, they've got nurses, they've got trained people there who are doing the background work. So that's what happens. But you do pay a lot of money to go and starve really on wheatgrass and the green juices.
Now, we're told...
But of course, they're making you well. So it's not starving. In fact, you are treating your body. You are, you know, people do a detox maybe once a year. Some people come back every year to a place like Hippocrates or the place in San Diego. And they go once a year just to get themselves well again.
But it's also meeting like-minded people at the same time as well, isn't it? And obviously they can share recipes, stay in contact, and it's a motivational thing, having someone else doing the same thing as well.
It's great fun. And, you know, it's like getting born again. When you get born again, you change your friends, because now you've got the Christian friends, and the friends who are into the world are not so appealing anymore. And when you get born again with your food as well, it's amazing how you then start getting really friendly with the girl who runs the organic shop, you know, and the fitness trainers. And it's a whole new world. It's really exciting. And you find, you know, your people, because you find the people that you're really, and of course they've got great integrity. They're brave. They're always brave people who've made this change. You know, they're intelligent people because they've realized they've got to change. And you know, it was, I mean, goodness me, I was into all the wrong things, and then losing a daughter, you know, daughter of 20, absolutely turned my life around. And here I am, sitting on this red sofa with you and talking about healthy foods. It's amazing.
A testimony, Felicity.
It is a testimony, and my husband died of cancer as well, and he died within 6 weeks. It's absolutely shocking. And so we have to really take responsibility for our health.
Okay, so today we're talking about gluten healthy free bread. Now, all is not lost. We can make some delicious bread, and it can be baked raw vegan bread. We're going to show a clip in a minute.
Yes. We can make the most delicious breads.
That's the point of it, though, as well. We're not on our programme to just say, stop your diet, throw this away, and only juice. No, we can make some really nice and delicious food at the same time as well.
Yes, with flax and all kinds of things. We're going to show the clip?
Let's go to the clip. So it's called the baked raw vegan bread. Let's take a look at this. Mmm.
Alright guys, so let's get started making our raw bread recipe. Here I have 2 cups of whole grain raw buckwheat. Okay, I soaked for 8 hours in clean water. If you soak it, make sure you rinse it really well before you add to the recipe. Here I have 2.5 cups of sunflower seeds, also soaked for 8 hours in clean water. Also make sure you rinse it really well before you put this in the recipe inside your blender. Next, we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of chopped garlic, 2 cups of carrot. Okay, I chopped the carrot so it's easier on the blender. Okay, 2 tablespoons of Himalayan salt. Please do not use conventional salts because they are not healthy for your body. Okay, Himalayan salt is natural, it's unprocessed sea salt. You can use any natural sea salt you find in your area. 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of Italian herbs. Here I mixed sage, rosemary and basil, and also oregano. Okay, you can use any herbs you like. These are the ones I have at the moment, and I really like these herbs. So 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of Italian herbs or any herbs you like. Next, we'll add 1/4 of cup of flax seeds. I grounded the flax seeds myself here at home, and I soaked them in water, and they become this gel. This will bind the bread. This will bind the mixture together to create the bread. Okay, so 1/4 of cup of grounded flaxseed. And the last thing we will add is half of a cup of olive oil. This is cold pressed olive oil, organic. And I also have handy here water because we might need it. So let's blend it. I just need to spread spread the mixture evenly on a baking tray. So here we have it. Our baked raw bread is ready. All right, so we're gonna cut it now. Now that we learned how to make this raw vegan bread, the baked version of raw vegan bread, it's time to try it. Let's try it together, okay? All right.
Wow, that looks nice.
It's gorgeous. And of course you can put avocado spread on top of it. To
How
make
do you
it
make
into a
avocado
sandwich.
spread?
You just mash the avocado with a little bit of lemon juice.
Simple as that.
A little tiny bit. Yeah, I mean, it's the easiest dressing in the world as well, because you can just put a few lemon drops onto the top of the avocado, the halved avocado, just mash it up and make that into a dressing.
Shall we just discuss the ingredients that were in the baked raw vegan bread, Felicity?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about the ingredients.
Right, well, see, we've got the buckwheat and we've got the sunflower seeds, which you soak. This is the thing, you know, I have talked before about when we soak seeds overnight, you get the aflatoxins off them. So that's the indigestible part of seeds. And then we do them in the dehydrator. This time she's actually putting them into a bread recipe. And so she adds garlic and carrot and the Himalayan salt, which is lovely. She puts in lots of herbs, the rosemary, the basil, the oregano, or oregano, as the Americans say. I love that, don't you? And the basil probably as well. I was thinking basil.
Basil.
Okay, it's basil, right. And then a quarter cup of the ground flax seeds, again soaked, the olive oil, and then you just bake it in the dehydrator or in the oven. Now, a lot of people don't have dehydrators, so I was really glad to show this clip because she's saying you can do it in the oven as well, on a slow oven.
If some of our viewers are unfamiliar with a dehydrator, I mean, what is a dehydrator?
A dehydrator is really just a box. You can get round ones, but the one I have is the Excalibur, which is like a box, and you have drawers in it that you slide in and out, and you put your flaxseed, you put the seeds and the nuts and whatever you want to dry in there. And so you've got 5, 7 or 9 drawers according to the size you buy, and you just turn that on. It only goes up to 105 degrees Fahrenheit, so it doesn't kill the living enzymes. That's the whole thing about a dehydrator. It's very gentle and it doesn't kill the living enzymes. And, you know, we all thought when we trained, oh, we don't need a dehydrator, you know, we'll do it in the oven. But in fact, you do need a dehydrator. And the flaxseed bread and the crackers are so delicious. So that's really the only grain I have at home.
And so, but you can still do, if you don't have a dehydrator, you can still do the same thing in an oven?
You can do it in a very, very slow oven, yes. Very gently in a slow oven. You've got to watch all the time, of course. But it is living food then, you know. This is the great thing that we get something called leukocytosis, which is the blood cells rushing to fight the invader when we eat cooked and processed food. You know, the body is literally saying, what's this? I don't want this in my body. Because it's really been changed and wrecked. From the point of view of our cells need living food. They need living enzymes. They need hydrogen, oxygen. And of course, when you cook something for a long time, you wreck that. You take out all the goodness and the living enzymes.
Now, something that's been in the news recently, and it seems to always be popping up in our newspapers and on the news, is they say it's costly to be eating healthy. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, organic food does cost more. But you see, I never buy anything from the butcher or the fishmonger. So, in fact, my food bills are much cheaper. I just buy at the farmer's market, and when I can grow things, I grow them. So I'm just paying for the seed, basically. So, no, my food bills have gone down a quarter of what they used to be when I was, you know, doing dinner parties and entertaining for business and things. So then we had very rich food. When I think of the you know, the duck à l'orange and those fatty puddings, you know, the really everything loaded with cream.
Yeah.
Because I once did a cordon bleu course, you know, with all these rich things. And because my husband was in business, you know, we had business dinner parties, and I used to produce all this rich food. And I think, now, how sad was that?
And now, if you're entertaining or you're having a few guests over, what would you prepare for your guests?
Well, avocados always go down well, and melon goes down well. And, you know, I'll do a curry, but very often, I mean, my children at Christmas, they say, oh, Mum, you know, please, please cook the turkey. And then, as I said, my grandson came in, and he'd never seen me cook anything like that before. He said, Granny, what have you done to that bird, you know? Oh, and I felt terrible. But
and you cooked the turkey? You actually cooked the turkey?
I had to cook the turkey for my son and my daughter, who really wanted to have a traditional Christmas. But you can have a fabulous raw vegan Christmas as well. And if I was not at home with the children, that's exactly what I'd do. Yeah.
Now, something I want to ask you is, because we're talking about the gluten-free bread and we need to avoid wheat. Now, what do we do for our children? Our children are used to having their snacks of having a sandwich or something like that. What are all the alternatives?
Well, you know, the Fresh Life Sprouter that we've got, where we sprout the sunflower seeds, that's a wonderful way of teaching the children how to grow healthy food. And you can do...
There you go. I think it's just on screen.
That is actually my Fresh Life Sprouter. And there I have done the sunflowers. You can do wheat, buckwheat. You can do wheatgrass in there. You can do alfalfa and cress. So there's all kinds of different things. Now, the children find this enormous fun to grow.
Yeah, and how does that actually work?
Well, again, you just get the seeds. You put them in the top half of that. You can see it's a double-barreled thing there. At the bottom, that barrel is full of water, and you change the water every couple of days.
Right.
Then there's an irrigating machine that comes up through the top. You see there's a little blue thing in the center there?
Yes.
And that actually irrigates every 10 minutes. The plants get exactly the right amount of water. It's really, really great. And of course, the children love that sort of thing. And of course, they love the juicer.
Yeah.
The first thing they say when they arrive in my flat is, Granny, can we make carrot juice? They prefer the carrot juice to the green juice.
So your whole house is green, Felicity, including your walls?
No, actually it's white, and I have to mop up all the time and make sure that we keep it clean. But, you know, they're washing up the juicer for me now. They're
Fantastic.
4 and 5. And, of course, the new baby is going to be introduced to all this quite soon.
Excellent. How exciting.
So it
How
is exciting. Yeah,
and it's even more exciting introducing your children to eating healthy as well when growing their own food. I mean, that's making it fun.
God has given me a second chance, because I really wrecked it with my own children, feeding them all the wrong things. And God has now given me a second chance with the grandchildren. So thank you, God. Yeah.
Well, we are coming towards the end of today's programme. If you can kindly just reiterate to our viewers why we should try and move away from wheat.
Well, we really have to move away from the modern wheat. We're not talking about biblical wheat. That's the Emma wheat that grew in Jesus' day. But now it's got so commercialized and spoiled, and so people are really becoming quite ill. And I'd just like to pray, really, I'd like to pray for intelligence for people to understand, for wisdom, to understand how things have changed, and to open their minds, do some research, and come to the right conclusions, get back to God's diet. And I do pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And that's it, Felicity. That is the end of today's programme, very, very quickly.
Well,
indeed.
I should have made some of those seed things for you. I can see that side. Poor chap.
I know. Next time.
I'll have to do that. I've got a course this week, so I'm really busy this week.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, viewers, well, that's our programme for today. Thank you so much indeed for joining us today. Remember that Revelation TV has a website. We have our catch-up service, so you can watch today's programme, you can see the clips again, and all the ingredients that we've mentioned on today's programme. It's on revelationtv.com. Look forward to seeing you same time next week. God bless and take care. Bye.